As part of the spillover of the Israel-Hamas war in the past few weeks, we have seen the escalation of the Hezbollah-Israel conflict, the opening of another front in the north of Israel. On 8th of October 2023, Hezbollah started firing guided rockets and artillery shells at Israel in solidarity with Palestinians following the Hamas attack on Israel that has taken place a day earlier on the 7th of October. The war in Gaza continues, with Israeli hostages still held by Hamas. But now, the Israel-Lebanon border is showing signs of becoming a second front. The Lebanese Shia militia, Hezbollah, and Israeli armed forces have been exchanging heavy fire. Over the past couple of weeks, Israel has killed senior Hezbollah military leaders and Hezbollah operatives. So now, 10 days before the first anniversary of the Hamas attack, what is the ground situation in Israel? I have with me editor of News9 Plus, Sandeep Unnithan, who has just returned from Israel. Sandeep, explain to our viewers what is the ground situation there right now as we speak.
Well, thank you, Kartikeya. The ground situation right now, it's on the precipice. And let's not forget, West Asia has always been on the precipice for decades. But this time, the sense of foreboding, the fact that you can actually hear the engines of war in the background, you can see the attack helicopters flying back and forth, the fighter jets, missiles being fired, interceptors rushing to intercept them. I was there in Tel Aviv a few days back when Hezbollah fired its first ballistic missile at Israel to the heart of Tel Aviv. There's a place called Tel Aviv-Yafo where Mossad has its headquarters. So on the morning of the 25th of September at exactly 6:29 a.m., which is the same time that Hamas struck at Israeli civilians.
So Sandeep,
a ballistic missile came in.
So that's the map.
Yes.
So can you just please explain it to us? Just take us through the story. Just take us through your own experience. Can you just go to the map, Sandeep?
Yes.
And take us through the entire deployment that has taken place?
Well, actually, so this is what the situation looks like right now. You have Israeli forces which have been focused around Gaza over the last year. 7th of October 2023 is when Hamas surged out of the Gaza Strip to a distance of almost 30 kilometers, attacking Israeli civilians. They killed something like 1,400 Israeli civilians. They took 200 of them hostage. 101 hostages are still in the custody of Hamas. Israel has been fighting this war for the last year. It's gone into the Gaza Strip. It's inflicted heavy casualties on Hamas. Something like 10 or 15,000 Hamas fighters have been killed, and something like 40,000 civilians have been killed as well. The United Nations has said that. But now what we are seeing is, a year later, a phase 2 of the ground offensive, when the entire Israeli military machinery is realigning itself towards the northern borders with Lebanon. This is the border with Lebanon. This is the Litani River that's flowing in Lebanon. And this is where Hezbollah, which is the world's most powerful non-state actor, is based. Hezbollah has been attacking Israeli civilians here in northern Israel, forcing 60,000 Israeli civilians to flee.
Israel's water security is around Golan Heights.
Yes.
It's of the Sea of Galilee. What sort of a deployment is there, and how concerned Israel is about its food basket and water, which is primarily in north, where another front is opening, as you are telling me?
Absolutely. But the primary concern of Israel, Kartikeya, is the fact that its civilians need to be protected. 60 to 70,000 Israeli civilians have been displaced from their homes in northern Israel. This is the first time in the history of Israel, since its creation in 1948, you have almost 1% of the country are internally displaced. They have all fled from this northern regions. They've all come into the towns and cities. In fact, we met several of these civilians in Tel Aviv. And that is the situation we're looking now. It's an explosive situation. Israel is on the precipice. It's about to launch a ground-based invasion of Hezbollah into Lebanon.
Thank you, Sandeep. Israel has announced the name of its ongoing military operation against Hezbollah, Northern Arrows. Following the attacks, On Hezbollah via handheld pagers and walkie-talkies, Israel has conducted airstrikes against Hezbollah. This has led to heavy shelling by the Hezbollah on Israel. Israel has said this is first phase of retaliation that was successfully completed. If these were the first strikes, how will the next one play out? Before this, let me introduce our guests. I'm joined by Lieutenant Colonel Avital Leibovich, Director AJC Jerusalem. Thank you so much. Elie Pieprz, Director International Relations, Israel and Defense Security Forum. Thank you so much, sir. And Major General K Datta, Defense and Counter Terrorism Expert, sir. A very warm welcome to you. So Sandeep, you take us through what Northern Arrows, an operation, means for us.
Kartikeya, you know how military offensives are planned is that in the opening phase you have a massive artillery bombardment which is meant to disrupt the enemy's command and communication networks, decapitate the enemy, make sure that it cannot respond to the first assaults. And this is called the softening up operations. So what we have essentially seen since the 17th of September, which is when these pager blasts went off, walkie-talkies, booby-trapped walkie-talkies
So basically,
exploded.
Sandeep, you're saying it's going to be both naval and land.
Well, so the opening phase of this was the disruption of Hezbollah's command and control, which Israel has not officially acknowledged. But the fact is that Hezbollah's networks, its command and control is in tatters. The second phase is what we are seeing now, which is a massive aerial bombardment of Hezbollah. Let's not forget, Kartikeya, that this is the war that Israel has been preparing for a very long time. Hezbollah is its arch enemy. Hamas took Israel by surprise on the 7th of October. Hezbollah is not going to be able to pull that off now in 2024. So what you have right now is the entire might of the IDF weighing on Hezbollah, disrupting their command and control, targeting their military commanders. Hundreds of Hezbollah commanders, mind you, these are the top generals of the Hezbollah who have been struck in their homes, in their offices, in their bunkers. These have been completely disrupted, their leadership has been eliminated, and what possibly you could see in the days ahead, Kartikeya, is the fact that there will be airstrikes followed by the ground element moving in. The ground assault using tanks, using infantry in armored personnel carriers, self-propelled artillery, and possibly naval bombardment as well. You will have Israeli naval ships off the coast in the Mediterranean firing missiles and targeting Hezbollah positions with naval gunfire.
Okay.
It's going to be a three-dimensional assault on Hezbollah's capabilities. All of it is to secure Israeli civilians living in northern Israel.
Okay. When we talk about assault, the question which comes to our mind is, Colonel Avital Leibovich, is it going to be a shallow assault? Is it going to be like 34-day war? Or is it going to be like 1982 when there were boots on the ground in Beirut?
Thank you for the question. For obvious reasons, I could not give a full detailed description of the ongoing operational plans. But before I answer your questions, I do want to mention that there was a previous phase, which was the longest phase, and that was the phase of diplomacy. Israel has allowed for 10 long months for 3 messengers or envoys from the US, from France, from Germany, to go back and forth to Beirut and to engage and try to reach some diplomatic solution, which they have not. While all of this time, Hezbollah has fired more than 9,000 rockets and more than 1,000 explosive drones into Israel. Therefore, the operational answer would be as such that will neutralize Hezbollah's capabilities, launchers, rockets, terrorists who are activating those means, as well as drone factories and drone elements. So this is in large, I would say, the main effort of the operational plans.
Okay. Any thoughts on it? Is it going to be like a shallow incursion, or is it going to be like a deep incursion where the ground territory is held?
Well, I think as Lieutenant Colonel Leibovich has said, I think it's going to be very similar to what she was expressing. The main concern here is that Israel has to reestablish a sense of security for our civilians who live in the northern part of the country, and frankly, for the entire state of Israel. That can only be done, and that will only be done, if we are able to harm and significantly degrade Hezbollah. What that will mean, part of it depends on Hezbollah. How much are they going to continue the escalation? How much are they willing to negotiate? How much are they willing to retreat? That we will only see in the coming days. But Israel has made it very clear that it has the capabilities, it has the intelligence, and it has the ability to execute in a level that probably Hezbollah could not imagine.
Elie, both even in Gaza, where civilian and the military complexes are intermeshed, the same, I would say the dilemma would be in Lebanon?
Well, there are some similarities, but there also are a number of distinctions. As we saw in the last couple of days, we saw a significant amount of Lebanese fleeing the battlefield. And I think that's actually in very stark contrast to what unfortunately was not allowed to happen in Gaza. Obviously, the immediate battlefield, Israel did tremendous effort in warning and giving advance warning, both through text messages, through leaflets, and through other communications, to make sure that the Gaza civilians understood there was an imminent attack that was happening. In Lebanon, where many civilians were actually housing the actual weapons, they knew that they were the targets. They saw what had happened just a few months earlier in the Gaza Strip, understood that they were facing the exact same result, and therefore they got out of town very, very quickly. And how many of them are going to be leaving Lebanon itself? I think we may see that happening in the near future.
Okay, let me go across to General Datta. Sir, you were in Israel in 1982 during the war. What's your assessment, sir?
After 1982, there have been other smaller battles between Israel and Hezbollah. 2006, if you recollect, and since 2006, there have been continuous pinpricks by Hezbollah on the northern borders of Israel. On and off, they've been doing something. They've been carrying out ambushes, carrying out some rocket strike, carrying out guerrilla warfare tactics, and Israel has always hit them back. Now, as far as Israel is concerned, Israel knew that someday they will have to sort out Hezbollah's capabilities to make sure that they do not retain any military capability to hit at Israel in the northern areas, and of course, from the southern Lebanon. Now, seeing what happened on 7th of October 2023, we are almost going to complete 1 year in another 10 days. Hezbollah carried out unprovoked attacks on Israel after the Hamas 7 October attack. And Israel has continuously been retaliating and targeting those areas from where these guys were carrying out these attacks. Now the thing is, at this particular juncture, Israelis have to evacuate about 60,000 civilians from the northern Israel. And that is not something which has ever done by Israel since maybe 1948. Therefore, within Israel, there is a resentment, there is a pressure on Mr. Netanyahu that the security and the safety of the Israeli civilians has to be ensured. And the only way to ensure that is to hit back at Hezbollah in such a manner that they will not have the capability of striking northern Israel. Now that can be done in two ways. One is to finish off the military capabilities, their strategic assets, and shape the tactical battlefield to push back the Hezbollah from that area in southern Lebanon, which they are using at the moment for carrying out rocket and drone attacks on northern Israel. So therefore, what you see now, it has been striking the entire command, control, communication, and the leadership of Hezbollah.
Okay.
And only now 3 big leaders are left as far as Hezbollah is concerned. Rest of them have been neutralized. That pager attack was a twofold activity. It was to identify, target those Hezbollah operatives and their leadership. And secondly, also to identify the Hezbollah targets, because wherever the pager blasted was a Hezbollah target.
Okay.
That has been mapped and they have been struck now by the Israeli Air Force. Hezbollah has made rocket installations within the houses and buildings in southern Lebanon and various other places in Lebanon. Therefore, the Israeli Air Force has already given a warning that all those people are not connected with Hezbollah. Please move away 1,000 meters from those targets. Now, this is a beautiful move. We in India, in the disaster management realm, we have a system to identify how many people are there in a disaster
Okay.
zone.
Okay.
And that gives us the location. Now, when somebody suddenly moves 1,000 meters away from a particular pinpoint, that gives me a target. And that target is struck immediately by the Israeli Air Force. So now, as far as I'm concerned, Israel will definitely plan to push back the Hezbollah to an extent from where they cannot carry out any strikes on the northern region of the
Okay,
Israelis.
we'll
And
come,
make
General
sure
Datta, we'll come to this point later. This Israel-Hezbollah escalation is the largest to have occurred since the 2006 Lebanon war. They have a long history of war. Let's take a look at the graphics. Now, in 1978, 1982, 2006, these are the time markers of the escalations that took place. 78, Israel launched Operation Litani, invades Lebanon. 82, invades Lebanon again. 2006, Hezbollah attack sparks Israel-Lebanon war. Sandeep, where can the compromise happen in context of if Hezbollah takes a step back? What is that step back?
The step back is very clear, Kartikeya. Hezbollah and indeed the government of Lebanon have to implement Article 1701 of the UN Security Council resolution of 2006, where it was mandated that they would have to disarm all these militia groups and not allow them to move around freely in Lebanon. That's a given. Now, if Lebanon does that, which they can't, unfortunately, because the Hezbollah is more powerful than the state of Lebanon. It has more soldiers than the Lebanese army. Hezbollah is a state within a state, and today it controls the state of Lebanon. And if Hezbollah were to implement that Article 1701 and move north of the Litani River, mind you, that's the compromise that Israel is willing to accept. If you move north of the Litani River, which is about 30 kilometers away from the blue line, then you create a buffer zone protecting Israeli civilians. That could also spell an end to the conflict. But unfortunately, it has now become a case of Hezbollah riding a tiger. They are unlikely to get off, and that could possibly degrade their capabilities even further.
Okay. A quick reaction from Lieutenant Colonel Avital Leibovich. Can we say that the Lebanon has become a proxy state of Iran?
100% you can say that. And I also want to reflect for a minute on what you said, and you gave historical examples of previous confrontations, but 18 years have passed since 2006 and the last confrontation, and Hezbollah is not in the same place. First of all, the amount of rockets Hezbollah has today is estimated by the Israeli intelligence at around 150,000, and this is compared to 20,000 rockets back in 2006. In addition to that, they did not have a commando unit by the name of Radwan, and this is a special force unit that has one goal: to breach the border between Israel and Lebanon, to infiltrate into Israeli communities and kidnap, kill, control, occupy, how many Israeli communities as possible. And last, they did not have drone capabilities like they do have today. So you're asking again, where are the source of all of these tools and the know-how and the funding? And the answer is one. That is Iran, Iranian money, Iranian directive, Iranian funding, training. And Iran actually is pulling the strings not only with Hezbollah, but also with the pro-Iranian Iraqi militias, with the Houthis in Yemen, with the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and other organizations, small organizations in the region. So definitely the directions all lead to one place, to Iran.
Okay, yes. Now, let's give you the big picture. IDF said that it struck around 1,600 targets just on Monday. This included striking long-range cruise missiles, heavyweight rockets, and drone sites that were going to be used to cause major damage in all areas of Israel. The terrorist group fired more than 200 rockets into Israel. So let's talk about the timing of this escalation. Elie, why this escalation now? Why has Israel chosen this time to go for Hezbollah, to degrade its capability?
Well, thank you so much. That's a very key question. Israel has given diplomacy a very, very long time to materialize. It's not even for the last 11 and a half months, but even before that, as we've all been saying, Hezbollah has been building up for this war for a very long time. There were UN resolutions that they have been flagrantly violated for almost 2 decades. There is a UN agency, UNIFIL, that was designed specifically to police and to enforce it, which they have never done. And there has been negotiation that's been going on to try to get Hezbollah to be in compliance, but they've completely resisted and they have not expressed any interest in doing so. As Israel is winding down its campaign in the south, it was able to deploy many resources to the north of Israel, and that's why we're seeing things happening right now. Israel's not waiting for Hezbollah to make a further move. They took the first move on October 8th, and they've been taking consistent moves since then. But the next step is going to be dictated by Israel, and Israel understands that that's the only way that we're going to be able to win this war.
Okay. Now, this Israel-Hamas and Hezbollah war is actually the Iran-Israel proxy conflict, as Sandeep Unnithan had summed up at the beginning of this show. In fact, if you look at this map, see how Israel is surrounded? Israel is surrounded by all the Iranian proxies. You have Hamas, you have Hezbollah, and I would say even Syria has substantial Russian presence. And Alawites are more aligned to the Shia Iran's politics than Saudis. So you have therefore Syria, I count Syria in also. And then you have the Houthis, and even the temperament of Iraq has changed, isn't it, Sandeep, over
Absolutely.
a period of time?
Yes. Well, Kartikeya, what you're looking at essentially is one of the world's longest proxy wars. It's been on for nearly 45 years. It began with the revolution that ushered in Ayatollah Khomeini in Iran in 1979. Ever since, Iran, over the last 4 decades, has ringed Israel with this ring of fire, as they're calling it, proxies all across West Asia. And now, what you're looking at is a Shia zone of influence beginning in the Mediterranean with Syria, as you mentioned, Lebanon, which has been captured by Hezbollah. You can drive from Syria and Lebanon
Absolutely.
right to the borders of Pakistan or the Arabian Sea without crossing one single Sunni Arab
Correct.
state. And this axis of Shia axis, this Shia super state, has been put together by several unfortunate events, like the invasion of Iraq in 2003, which took out Saddam Hussein, and because of which now Shia-ruled, Shia-dominated Iran is now controlling this entire network. This axis, this Shia superstate, call it this ring of fire or this zone of influence, this is the reality now, and this is the kind of war that Israel has been facing the brunt of in the last couple of months.
Okay, so there's a big question after that. The big question is, can this really escalate into something before? So, but before I put that question, let me introduce my next guest, Savio Rodrigues, who is also a journalist and who has also just returned from Israel. Now, let me straight away go to Savio Rodrigues. Savio, you were in Israel with Sandeep. So, what's the big picture right now? Are we looking towards a full-blown war with Lebanon?
Well, I wouldn't call it a war, Kartikeya. The reason why I don't call it a war is because what you had on October 7th. Many people forget what happened on October 8th. On October 8th, without any provocation, the Hezbollah attacked Israel. And they have been attacking for the last year. I believe 9,000 missiles have been shot at Israel. So you're not looking at a war, you're looking at Israel defending itself from the terror outfits, which is Hamas, and Hezbollah, which is also a terror outfit, in order to create a secure and safe place for the people of Israel. That is a defense strategy. They are not being offensive. They are being defensive and now moving into an offensive state after a year, primarily because Hezbollah hasn't stopped. Hezbollah has come into the fight after the Hamas terror attack. And the Hamas terror attack, if anyone of a sane mind is going to accept it as normal, we need to really rethink what normal is in this world right now. Having seen some videos which are not public, I can tell you without a doubt that the terrorism attack of Hamas must be condemned by every single leader in this world.
Avital, when Savio says this, it brings me to two observations. One, that in the global narrative, the escalation in Lebanon is being seen as something as if it just happened in last 48 hours or 72 hours or last 1 week. There is an emptiness or lack of memory that after, as he said very rightly, that after 7th of October 2023, Israel was being continuously attacked from its northern borders by Hezbollah. Why is that not part of the narrative, if I may ask you? Why has world global leaders not incorporated, as you said very rightly, Savio, spoken about a silent war being waged by Hezbollah on Israel?
Well, I assume it's always easier to talk about issues like humanitarian aid and human rights. This is something that more global leaders connect to rather than really tough, difficult questions which Israel has been facing since October 8th. Now, I'm speaking to you right now, 7 miles from the Lebanese border, and it is totally a war zone here. The roads are empty, the stores are closed, jets are in the sky, sounds of explosions are ongoing, and this has been the situation for almost a year. So the fact that media and world leaders' diplomatic efforts has put an emphasis on Gaza, that's okay, but this is not the real issue. There is really no comparison between Hamas and Hezbollah. And the question that I believe needs to be asked, is the world ready to tackle Iran? Because this is what it's all about. Now, Israel, as it has been said already, will do whatever it takes to defend itself, like any other country would do. And by the way, I do think Israel practiced great restraint with these 9,000 plus rockets and 1,000 explosive drones that has been launched at it. But the big question is Iran. Is the world willing to tackle Iran, to put sanctions on Iran, to maybe ensure that Iran drops its plans and nuclear plans? I'll remind all of us that Iran also has long-range rockets that can reach Europe.
Okay.
Is anything done with this regard?
General Datta, do you think that Hezbollah wants a war, as Hamas wanted a war with Israel? Why do they want a war, Hezbollah?
See, the thing is, Hezbollah was looking for an easy target to show that they are supporting the Hamas in Gaza, and whatever they're doing against Israel is to stop Israel from attacking civilians in Gaza and causing the number of deaths which have occurred there. Now, if you recollect on 7th October when the Hamas attacked Israel and carried out that kind of atrocities which have never been seen in the realm of terrorism, Mr. Netanyahu had then warned that now what Israel is going to do, your 10 generations will remember. And it is that operation which was launched in Gaza, starting from the north and coming down to the Gaza city, then further down south and ending at Rafah, and then mopping up that entire activity. And those operations are still ongoing, where the remnants of Hamas are still being tackled. So the first aim of Israelis were to finish off Hamas so that they are not left off as a power to rule in Gaza. Now, while this was happening, Hezbollah continued their massive strikes, 9,000 rockets being fired of different kinds, killing and maiming some kids also while playing soccer in a field. So the Israelis had to retaliate, and to retaliate in a manner that Hezbollah loses its capability of carrying out
Okay.
any damage in Israel.
Sir,
Now,
sir.
see, your question was, is Hezbollah looking for a war? I said Hezbollah was trying to pinprick Israel and forcing its hand to attack Hezbollah, and they are going to get it.
Okay. So that's the point Sandeep had made. Now, there are two resolutions of UN. Resolution 1559 and Resolution 1701. That has talked about how to bring about peace. So let's look at what both says. Now, let me take you through the 1559, Lebanon to hold free and fair presidential election, to establish control over territory, disarm militias like Hezbollah, facilitate the withdrawal of foreign forces from the country. Now, UN Security Resolution 1701. After 2006 Israel-Lebanon war, it says full cessation of hostilities between Israel and Hezbollah, withdrawal of Israeli forces from Lebanon, disarmament of armed groups including Hezbollah, Lebanon's need to fully exert government control, unconditional release of abducted Israeli soldiers. Do you think, Savio, that Lebanon can ever be free from Hezbollah and Iran?
Well, I don't think so. I don't think any
Structurally.
not even structurally. I think what we are missing really is everybody is talking, including Israel is talking about waging a war against Hamas, or Hezbollah. We're not talking about bodies. The bodies can end up dying. The bodies can end up destroying. What you are talking about is the ideologies, and the ideologies just does not die. It keeps coming back again and again. Each time Israel has opened a door to peace with these nations, the terrorism has gotten even more stronger, and that is what you saw on October 7th. What you saw on October 7th was Israel and the rest of the world's plans for peace, plans for diplomacy actually getting completely thwarted, because Islamic radical mindset will never be able to change. It's an ideology. We have to eradicate that ideology.
Okay. The same question to you, Elie, because when we talk about Lebanon, you have an action area. I have personally seen Hezbollah convoys in Damascus, free run. And I have seen fighters in Aleppo, Shia fighters, Caucasian fighters. So Syria provides depth to Hezbollah. So is it possible, can you think of a future where the strategic depth for these terrorists are absent and Lebanon can exercise its own sovereignty without having Hezbollah in middle or the Iranians in middle?
That's the hope. I agree, it's an optimistic hope right now. But I think one of there was a lot of discussion within the Israeli security establishment on October 7th, October 8th. How should Israel respond? Should Israel be responding first to Hezbollah in the north, or should it go to the immediate challenge to the south of Hamas? And Israel obviously decided to focus on its southern border. One of the benefits of that is that Lebanon was able to see Israel's staying power, Israel's ability to destroy Hamas. Still some elements there, but there are embers that are still smoldering. But the idea that as Lebanon sees what Israel, its capacity in the southern border, in Gaza, and then what it has already done to Hezbollah, the pin accuracy, the intelligence, that's the only way that maybe Lebanon will extricate itself from Hezbollah.
Okay. Sandeep, is that a possibility? They had to fight that war on their own territory.
Yes.
Do you think that this can happen in the northern areas where they might end up fighting Hezbollah in their own territory?
Well, clearly what we are heading towards, Kartikeya, is a ground-based invasion of southern Lebanon, of the kind that we saw in 2006, where you will have Israeli tanks, armored personnel carriers entering, physically crossing this blue line, going in and physically neutralizing Hezbollah, of the kind that happened in 1979, 1982, and finally 2006. In 1970, 78, my mistake. 78 and 82 were against the Palestinian Liberation Organization. When by 1982 they ejected the PLO from Lebanon, they had to literally flee to Tunisia. 2006 was against Hezbollah, which Iran then propped up as another proxy actor post 1982. Now 2024, the big question is if Israel moves in again, will it be for the last time? Will this cycle end once and for all?
Okay, Avital joins me. The question I want to ask you, and this is going to be the closing comment. 7th of October was different because Israel had to fight terrorists in its own territory. You were fighting a war in Israel. That makes the nature of war very, very different. Is that a possibility in northern areas? That the war can be inside the Israeli territory, inside the northern areas? Is that a possibility?
So I think we need to look very carefully about the goal that the Israeli cabinet gave to the army 2 weeks ago. And the goal is to ensure the safe return of the people from northern Israel and to live there in peace and stability. This is the goal. The goal was not to crush Hezbollah. The goal was not to eliminate all the capabilities of Hezbollah. At the end of the day, we're speaking here after almost 1 year of a war from 7 different fronts: Gaza, West Bank, Lebanon, Syria, Houthis, Iraq, and Iran. 7 fronts. So this obviously has a payment, a heavy price. Not only in human lives, of course, this is the number one concern for us, but also in economy and in other issues as well. That's why I believe that Israel will want to achieve the achievement of returning stability and safety to the border area very quickly, very powerfully, with targeting the right terrorists in Hezbollah as fast as possible. There is no need to open a very long war in additional fronts as well.
Okay, I would like to say thank you to all my guests, and I would end of the show say that, well, we have spoken about one front, one area where tensions have escalated, but let us not forget that there is another area which we know as the Ukraine front, where a war is going on, and there is a third front where there is a frozen conflict and great maritime activity, which is the Strait of Taiwan. And this scenario makes the current world, a dangerous place.